The first ghost story that I have to tell is when I was growing up at my parents' house during my early years, I constantly encountered an old man that was holding out his hand to try to take me somewhere. I always wondered what would have happened if I would have grabbed his hand and he would have taken to me where he wanted me to go. So that is my first ghost story. I'm gonna take this out over here. I'm gonna walk back, make the L shape. Yep.
When I was little, I used to look down the hallway and I would always see a man peeping from behind the curtain of the laundry room. One day I decided to go into the laundry room, turn around, and he's standing right in front of me. That's it.
House. I went to the basement alone, walked down the stairs, and the walls felt like they were moving in and out. I felt very alone, turned around toward the hole and saw two red eyes staring back at me.
First time I ever saw a Ouija board, for about 3 months afterwards, I was haunted by dreams of using it, where an entity would come up to me and ask me to basically use it. That was when I was about 12 years old.
So a little girl heard her mother call her downstairs for dinner. As she was going down the stairs, she heard a whisper behind her and said, "Sweetie, don't go downstairs. I'm hearing voices too."
When I was little, I kept seeing a young boy and a young girl underneath my sister's bed. I kept insisting that they were talking to me all night, and that's why I was staying up so late and not sleeping. My mother didn't believe me, but every night after that, for the next year, the boy and the girl were underneath the bed.
since I've been in the Monroe House, I felt a dark attachment follow me. And every night since I've been here, it's been taunting me and following me wherever I sleep.
Every night, I'm sorry, Mr. Edward. At my house growing up, I passed by my basement door and there was a man on the stairs. I insisted and was hysterical because I thought someone had broken into the house. My brother searched the entire house and there was no one there.
It's getting weirder in here.
They're like surrounding us.
8 years ago, I had an exorcism performed on me, and I'm still traumatized as to what I experienced during that exorcism. I was told not to use the Ouija board ever again, but as you can see, I still use it to this day.
I was having sweet dreams until I woke up from the sound of a hammer. And I realized I was laying in a coffin and the dirt was being poured over it. My screams began to get muffled and I was left there to die.
We lived in Alaska and went for a walk one day and came across a large moose. This moose did not like us. It started to chase us through the woods, and to the point where my husband threw me into the bushes to get out of the way of the moose. We could hear it snorting and snarling. As soon as he threw me out of the way, we turned around and there was no moose.
One of my very first paranormal investigations with a group, we went out to a winery where there was it was just an abandoned winery up in Northern California. I only lasted 2 minutes there and I ran out, and the reason why I ran out is I heard a woman first saying help, and as I got closer to it, I heard a very long, drawn-out demonic growl that said, "Timmy." As I started backing up, I heard this woman say, "It's raping me."
I had a dream where my mother came into my room and I followed her into the bathroom. She was trying to protect me from something. As she was hugging me in the bathroom, she kept telling me to look into the mirror. Look into the mirror, you're going to see the ghosts. And then I looked back at her and her face started to get deformed. And it was not my mother.
I went to Waverly Hills and encountered a spirit there who was a young girl who was at unrest. She kept saying, "I don't belong here, I don't belong here, I don't belong here." Well, trying to speak with her, I came to find out that because she had been so sick and because she'd suffered so much, she inadvertently made a deal to stop her suffering. She said, whatever it would take, please just stop my suffering. And unknowingly, she made a deal with the devil. Her suffering was stopped by her death, and she's now stuck at Waverly.
There's a lot more stories to this house. I'm kind of worried.
Yeah.
Back in 2012, I went to the Sally House with Patrick and Scott and John Hauser, and John got a call from his wife, who he thought it was his wife, and so I was there when he picked up the phone. I could hear her on the other side, and when he started talking to her, he started crying. So I asked him what was going on. He said his sister-in-law had gotten in a terrible car wreck, so he just cut out. It was about an hour drive away for him to get to to home. So when he got home, he immediately called me. He said that when he walked in, he asked why is his wife not at the hospital? And she said, "Oh, what are you talking about?" And it turned out it wasn't his wife that called her.
I was on a paranormal investigation once, and we were in a cemetery, and we went to some building next to the cemetery, and I thought my team member was following me, and I turned around. No one was there, so I kept going further inside, calling out for my team member. No one was there, and then the door closed, and I was left there, and I got locked in.
I just had a story right out of my mouth.
Right, thank you for this.
Don't do that, let's go. When I was in Virginia, I went to a woman's house to see who was haunting her house, and sat down with another woman. Come to find out they were both witches. We were trying to find out through Ouija who the person was when, about the next thing I know, I woke up crying. I'd been jumped by a spirit who was a man who had been attracted to the house. I had no idea that I had been channeled or jumped by a spirit. I just woke up crying and holding one of the women's hands. We figured that the three of us together had been so powerful that it just opened a door.
Yeah, don't pour the wax.
It was in
No, they burn out. Okay, so Virginia City is one of my favorite places to go. About 4 years ago, I was investigating up there with a bunch of friends, and we were just having a good time. I got back. There's hotels downtown. I got back home really late. It was probably about 4 in the morning at this really old swanky hotel called the Silver Queen. That night, I had a lot of trouble sleeping because the person next door to me was just loud as fuck. I could hear like the TV on, like doors being slammed, yelling, and the next morning I woke up to my friends. I don't know what time I fell asleep. I was really mad. That morning I woke up to my friends knocking, pounding on my door, asking to, they wanted me to go out to breakfast, and I was like, fuck, I gotta sleep. So as I was like, you know, one of them had to use the restroom, so he came inside, and there's about 5 people waiting outside my door, and I was just really annoyed because like I wanted them to leave. And as they were waiting outside, I heard the door next door open, and I could hear this guy talking in a real thick Australian accent to my friends. And I was like, oh, so that's the fucker that was keeping me up all night. Anyways, as they were talking to him, this really bad smell started to come in the room. It got so strong, and I pulled my shirt over my face. Well, anyways, my friend comes in, and the guy goes away, and I can hear the door slam next to mine. And so it was him. The guy, one of my friends, comes in, and the first thing he says to me, he doesn't believe in the paranormal. He just says, Tim, I think that guy was dead. So I waited, I just kind of waited in my room. I thought, this is crazy. The smell started to subside. About an hour later, the housekeeper came by, and I asked the housekeeper, who's living next door? And she said, she had a weird look on her face. And then she said, wait a second. And then I waited for about a half hour more, and then she finally came back up to do the sheets on my bed. And I asked her again, and she was real hesitant. And she said, oh, we've kept that door locked for the past 6 months. She's like, this guy flew in from Australia and overdosed on painkillers up there. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy. Long stories, I guess.
That's right. Good story.
Yeah.
I went to an asylum once to do a paranormal investigation, and we were in the basement, and it's an open building, anyone can go inside. And a bunch of teenagers wanted to join our paranormal investigation group, and I was not having it. Usually I'm very open to sharing experiences with people, but all of a sudden I felt this overpowering anger run through my body. My eyes began to go black. I was biting my tongue so hard I was bleeding. My nails were digging into my hands. I was bleeding in my hands. And all of a sudden I started to speak, and I said, I'm going to kill you. And when we listened to the recording afterwards, it wasn't my voice on the recording. It was a very deep, evil sounding growling voice that came out of my mouth. So that was pretty freaky.
I was at the Sally house once. We had a seance, and Tim was doing the Gonsfeld experiment. I was overcome by visions of 5 children being horribly, horribly tortured. At the same time, Tim started to sing a lullaby. When the experiment was over and the seance was over, I hadn't said anything to anybody about what I'd seen or the fact that there were 5 children. And Tim looked down at his arm and realized that he had 5 scratches. That's when I lost it.
There's a letter. Pick it. Must be a short. I can't pick that up. It's too hot.
Leave that one for a minute and we'll light it after your story. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just needs to cool down a second.
Alright, one of the dreams that haunted me when I was a child was having a dark entity that would wake me up at night. And one night he was asking me to follow me to my parents' room. And later that night, I followed him to my parents' room, and I saw both of my parents having like cardiac issues. And last dream I had of that, actually the last one I had was about probably 4 years ago. And later that night my dad had issues. So pretty freaky. Okay. This thing's hot. Hot too.
So when I was young, I slept in a bedroom with a friend of mine. She was sleeping over, and we heard some footsteps coming up the stairs. But everyone sleeps on the top floor, and no one on the main floor. So there was no reason for someone to go head upstairs. And then all of a sudden, the door opened slightly, and a long piece of wood just slipped through the crack of the door and started going up and down very slowly, and then it left, and we could hear footsteps going back down and then going back up, and that's it.
Every time I visit a certain location, there is an entity that kind of looks like a green alien that comes to my house. He used to try to come in. He's hairless. He has big black eyes, no nose, and a mouth. He looks like one of those alien grays, but tall. I've got him so that he can only come and show himself to me now. He used to come right up to the back door and bang on the glass about a week or so before I would go to this location. He still comes every time I go to this location, but he just shows himself in the backyard and then he's gone. And that's the way I know that the Sally house knows I'm coming back.
For the past 4 years, I've been having trouble sleeping. I haven't really been able to go to sleep at night. It started off where I'd hear it sounded like a Santa Claus on my roof, and with hoofs sometimes. And lots of times I'll wake up and I have finger marks on my neck.
So before coming to the Monroe House, I had a nightmare where I was doing my makeup one morning, and instead of doing my regular eyeliner, my eyes were closed, and I was drawing upside down crosses on my eyelids.
My daughter just moved into a new apartment in New York City, and I went up to help her move in. We were sharing a bed the first night that she was there, and we both woke up at the same time and had a floating woman right over our faces. She was just doing one of these things. My daughter looked up and said, "Get out of here, we are trying to sleep." And she went away.
felt really dirty, so I just go take a shower. And I'd wake up and go hop in the shower. And as I would take a shower, I would feel these hands that would go up my leg to my nuts. And I would tell the guys, and they thought I was fucking crazy. Because I don't know, like, it was just weird to tell them that. They'd all laugh at me. Then so later we interviewed a previous tenant who lived in the house, and it turned out that same bathroom she claimed that she was sodomized by the demon in that bathroom. Alright. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good story. Alright. Jesus Christ, life story here.
So one night I was sleeping and I felt arms wrapped around me. This is a dream, and so I hugged the person back. It was comforting and warm and loving. I felt safe and protected. And then I turned around, and whatever was holding me had no face, and the whole energy shifted, and I felt tricked.
Go for it. What?
No, it's fine.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
You're all right.
When I was young, I was asleep. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was these two entities dressed in like Greek goddess dresses. One of them was doing like this at me, and the other one was peeking out from behind. I've always wondered if they were angels or if they were demons. Something like that.
Sometimes when I go to the Sally house, I get calls from people, and sometimes calls from the dead. There was one time where I got back from the Sally house, and it's probably the second or third time I went there. And back in those days, I still had a tape message machine, and it left not an hour, but like a minute long screeching message on my voice. The answering machine, I guess that's what I used to call it, yeah, the answering machine. And yeah, when I listened to it, one of my ears started to bleed. That voice message is actually on the YouTube channel. You guys can find it. It's on the videos. There's a video of it. So shit. This is ridiculous. We should have like a fork or something. So. Dude.
I'm serious, like,
Something.
top layer of my skin is gone.
Yeah. That's gonna get worse too. It's getting hotter.
So I was watching a movie and I kept hearing noises behind me, but there's only a wall behind me. There was no space for there to be something, and I was home alone. So I got up and I searched the house. I went to the top of the stairs and I found someone upside down crawling up the wall.
There's a lot of candles left.
I know. When I went to the Washington State and went to the asylum, there was a creature there that I've never seen anything like before. It was made out of 4 different animals, and I believe it to be Native American. But all it does, and all it did, was consume energy. And I would walk through there and watch it go back and forth and back and forth and consume energy for people.
A month before I did the Zozo investigation in Oklahoma, I was standing outside of work and I was just having a cigarette, and all this sudden this lady that was wearing a business suit walking towards me on the street, and she started staring at me, and she says, "You know, he sees you." And I was like, "What?" And she just stopped, and then she started going into convulsions. And she kept on saying, "Your God is something." And like, it was just weird. She just started going into convulsions, and the paramedics had to come, and they basically had to put her into like restraints on top of a what do you call this?
Gurney.
Get gurney. It's pretty weird. But okay, let's keep going. How's that? This is all flake off, right?
Yeah.
Just let my finger away.
This is a brutal ritual.
Yeah. Alright.
So after an investigation, I came home and, during the investigation, I was attached by a woman who was in the closet. She was too afraid to leave the closet, and she's very sad and depressed. And then when I came home, I felt her in my closet, and all of a sudden my cat began to scratch at my closet. So I opened the closet, whatever was in it must have left. It was floating around the room, and I could see my cat chasing it very clearly.
Come around this side, so it can just like go a little bit, just so she can get by. It doesn't matter, we can go on either side of the table.
This way?
Yeah, just so, whatever's easiest. Right, you're up, kiddo.
I woke one morning with the knowledge of the date of my father's death. Didn't know what I was supposed to do with that. What do you do with that? It was 3 months away, and I did end up telling my mother. We didn't think that he would last that long. The doctors didn't think that he would last that long. They gave him 6 weeks. 3 months to the day, the exact day he died. That day, I got the date of my brother-in-law's death, who was healthy. I knew that he would drop dead, and I knew what day. And indeed, within 6 months, with me trying to warn people so that he would go to the doctor, and he wouldn't, he dropped dead on the day. And so if I tell you, go to the doctor, go to the doctor.
I'm just having a crazy part right now. I'm trying to think. Yeah. Probably 8 years ago, one of our very first streams, a bunch of us went out to a barn that was haunted, and the Ouija started. We were actually using the Ouija board in this little barn house, and the Ouija board was joking around with us, and we're like, what? Can you tell us something about the future? And it said warning. We're like, what? Like, whatever. And I said, warning about what? It said in 5 minutes. And we're like, okay, what's gonna happen in 5 minutes? And the board was like getting slower and slower to respond. But right when the last response that it said was, listen. And then sure enough, right as it said that, as we're streaming, a car flipped over on this road right outside the barn and slid to about 5 feet over the barn door. And freaked everyone out. Jesus Christ. I can't remember how you guys are freaked out. This is gonna get stupid. Why do you guys freak out?
I'm thinking about putting him on his sleeve. I'm gonna do it like this. You might get a little wax on it, do it on the shirt sleeve. Paper towel.
So, again, I was investigating in an asylum. This was my first time there. And I was downstairs. It was pitch black. Couldn't see a thing. Things were falling apart. We went into a back room, very small room, kind of like a pantry, because there used to be a kitchen downstairs. And as soon as we left the pantry, my flashlight on, flashlight started to dim, the light started to dim. And then when we went back into the pantry, it came on again. It was as though whatever was standing at the door couldn't come into that room. But as soon as we left, it was following us again.
I, in college, went to a Halloween party, and they had a Ouija board there. It's the first time I ever touched a Ouija board. Asked it a few questions, messed around, and as college kids will do. I went outside, tried to start my car. It wouldn't start. Went inside to get some friends' help. My dome light came on in the car. Went back outside, turned off the dome light, car wouldn't start. Went back inside, one of my friends would come out, the car would start, close the door, dome light would go on, I'd go out, turn off the dome light, try to start my car, it wouldn't start. This went on for like an hour. I was with a bunch of artists too, so the guys knew nothing about cars. It finally took me, after an hour of this stupid dome light going on and off, and the car not working for me personally. I got it working. By someone else starting it and me hopping in the car to drive home. I drove home. Both my mother and my father's cars had their dome lights on when I drove up. I went inside to get their car keys. I was pretty shaken up to get the dome lights turned off. Went back outside, the dome lights were off. I turned back around and went inside the house, and as I closed the door and looked back outside, the dome lights were back on, and that's when I said, fuck it. I didn't touch a Ouija board again until I met Tim.
I've always heard that you're not supposed to turn around and look for something if you're not prepared to see it. My very first paranormal cases I ever went on, there was a guy, he lived in his home, and every day he would be woken up by an entity whose head was turned around. He first saw the entity when he was riding his bike home through this torn down asylum in San Jose. And supposedly the legend is that in Japanese culture that spirits that cannot move on and die at untimely deaths, their heads actually flipped around 180 degrees. So when you see them, the front of them is sticking out or whatever. But yeah, this guy, he wasn't prepared to see that, and he eventually called me one night, and we were talking, and he was so freaked out. He said, I just can't take it anymore. I said, well, what do you mean? I said, just, sleep it off. So the next day, he was dead. They don't know what happened to him. So, creepy story, but yeah, he's with us. I always wonder if that guy's head is,
So someone I know does private investigations, and she went to this woman's house. The woman was clearly possessed. The woman kept saying that the only reason, the thing that was possessing the woman was saying the only reason they were keeping her alive was so they could use her body. And what would happen is that this male demon would rape her, and she lost like 30 pounds. She was dying slowly, but the only thing keeping her alive was the thing possessing her inside of her. Her whole life was ruined. She ended up dying eventually.
People ask me a lot, what's the scariest thing you've ever seen, the creepiest thing you've ever seen? And I'd have to say, after knowing about him, his eyes were completely dilated out black, the pupils were completely dilated out black, and he was gone. I stood there and at a safe distance tried to remind him of the things that Tim loves, that's important to Tim, that's not important to this other thing that he was channeling. And finally he was able to step away and bring himself back. But one of the scariest things I think I've ever seen is looking into those eyes and realizing that he was not there.
So people ask, where do I go, or what do I feel, or where do I go when I do Ouija sessions? And oftentimes it starts off with an energy through the feet that slowly goes works its way up through your legs, into your head, until you're surrounded by this kind of weird energy. And then sometimes when you're dealing with a dark energy, what I realize is it feels like you're in a black room, and you can hear the people that you know talking on the outside, but they just seem so far away.
So, The first time I knew for sure that I was seeing a spirit, an entity, was when I again was at the asylum. We were on the top floor and there was a window projecting the moonlight into the room, and that was the only light in the room. And all of a sudden, this very thick, opaque, black, foggy, smoke-looking thing just walked right in front of it. It was so black, it covered the entire window. There was absolutely no light in the room. It was very strong and tall.
We're getting there.
I was in New York City on the subway.
Fuck me. I swear to fucking God. Oh my God. It goes right behind me.
Keep going. Let's look at that.
I was
Oh my God.
on the. I thought you hit your head on the beat,
No.
which I haven't done once. Thank you very much. I just cursed
Damn,
myself. I was on the New York City subway. Looked kind of homeless. She was disheveled. She was dirty. She just looked like she'd been through hell. And she was screaming and she was screaming and she was screaming. And I couldn't understand why everybody else was carrying on with their business. And I thought, you know what? This is just the way New Yorkers are. It just doesn't really matter to them. And as people filed out at their certain stops, I realized, as I got a better look at her, that she was not indeed a woman that was on the subway, but she was a spirit that was stuck on the subway. And she kept screaming for help. And she looked at me, our eyes met, and I knew instantly what had happened to her. Just in that gaze, she told me that she had been raped and murdered on that subway car.
I was taking a shower once, and this time I was living with this chick, and I would always like try to shower before she got home, or she'd always be home before me cooking or whatever. But one day I got home and I could hear somebody in our room, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna hop in the shower. And I said something to her, and I thought she said, oh, I'm gonna go run to the store. So I said, I was like, okay, and so actually it was her. She went out and went to the store, and so like I played like, I don't know, some video game or something like that. And she didn't get home yet, so I was like, well, I'll just take a shower. And so I hopped in the shower, and washing my hair, and as I wiped my eyes off and put the soap that was kind of in my eyes, I looked over, and through the glass I could see this woman standing there. And so I said, hey, you're back already. And I didn't hear a response back. So I just was like, okay, she must be upset at me or something. So I just kept talking. And anybody knows me, sometimes I talk a lot. And as I kept talking, it just seemed like weird. And I was getting no response back. Anyways, I get out of the shower. And then about 5 minutes later, she walks in through the door. Front door, and so I always wondered who that lady was. Hopefully this is not gonna kill me in here.
So one of the very first times I played Ouija, I was young, my whole family was playing, and whatever was coming through called my aunt a slut and a bitch. The next morning she woke up and she had the word slut scratched on her backside right over us.
Ghost tramp stamp.
Exactly.
I was invited to go and watch a witches' coven do their Halloween celebration, which is called Salad. When they called the corners and read their speeches, they called out to certain gods and goddesses to join the circle. As they did that, I felt a rush of energy come to the back of the circle and encircle us. And chills went up and down my spine, and I could just see spirit popping in and popping in and popping in and popping in.
It's getting weirder in here, guys. No, it's just getting weird. Sometimes you can look to people's eyes and you can tell exactly what they're thinking or feeling. And they say sometimes when you look into a person's eyes, you can tell when they're going to die. About 5 years ago, I looked into my friend's eyes and I knew it was going to be the last time I saw him. I just had this gut feeling. And the next day I woke up to a call and he was dead.
So there's this hotel somewhere in Asia, and this woman, she was in the elevator all alone on the floor, and she started behaving very weird. She started walking back and forth in the same spot in the elevator. The doors would open by themselves. The lights in the elevator would flicker, and the buttons to press the floor would go on and off. And she was suddenly found dead, but her body was found in a water tank on the roof of the hotel. And the only way you can get in there is if you have the key. Very strange. To this day, it's one of the most haunted hotels in Asia.
We're getting there. We're making good progress.
There was a night that my son was out playing with one of his little friends, and I was expecting them back. I'd gone out in the backyard with the dog, and I was expecting the kids to be dropped off when I was hoping that I wouldn't miss the father that was dropping them off. I looked up through the windows and I saw the two boys run through the house, and I thought, oh my God, they're back, and I needed to run and go tell the father, thank you for dropping them off. I ran inside and I yelled, Colin, Sam, where are you guys? And I got no response. I was like, okay, very funny. I know, I saw you guys, I know you're here. I checked the driveway and I thought, oh, damn it, I missed the father. And so I called the father as I was going through the house because I knew the kids were hiding from me and they were just gonna jump out and scare me. And I said, I'm so sorry I missed you when you picked up. I can't believe I missed you. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, you dropped off the boys and I missed you. And he said, I haven't left the house yet. The boys are still here with me.
One thing that I always find kind of ironic is how people, paranormal investigators, specifically go looking for ghosts, hauntings, and demonic activity, but the one thing that they often forget is that demons and ghosts are often looking for people to haunt. Oftentimes when I get back from doing these types of investigations at places that could possibly have demonic activity, I get weird calls that from people that are seeking help or for me to investigate the names of activity. About 2 years ago, after investigating the Sally house, I got a call from a couple out in California who had just had both of their twins who were ages, they're aged 12, kill themselves, and I felt really guilty about it because they didn't believe their story of experiencing these shadow figures that would come to their beds every night and torment them. So I guess the moral of the story is, things are always looking for other things to haunt. I'm gonna not pick these up anymore. It's too beginning to go. How do you pick yours up?
Live side.
Yeah, I said. Okay. So my father was sick and he stayed in a hospital, a really old one. There happened to be a piano in his room, and this was the first time he encountered something, and he felt a chill, blast of cold air walk by him, and then the piano started playing, and he woke up from a bad dream and he saw someone playing the piano in the room. He was
So a friend of the family had fought in Iraq and been really injured and become a double arm amputee below the elbow. And they of course explained to Mike that he may feel phantom pain or phantom limbs, and and he understood that, and he did feel that at times, but what was most unsettling for him was that there were times when he felt someone else, like a cold hand, touching his hand, which he no longer had.
You're okay? Don't hit your head.
I did.
Yeah. Man, I'm getting out of stories here, so. Before coming out to this house, I've had troubles with my dreams. And there was this one dream that I had where I would be in the dream and I couldn't find any of my family members. And I could hear their voices emanating through the walls. sleep for 2 hours, but it felt like I could not wake up out of my dream. And eventually there was one of the doors opened up, and the walls opened up, and I looked in, and there were 3 old hags sitting there. And I said, hey, can you tell me where so-and-so is? And they said, no. But you have to, I think they wanted me to give them my soul. I said, well, I'm not going to give you my soul. I'm not going to make the deal. And they said, you will soon. And I said, well, until then, you can hang out with this person. As I opened up my eyes, that person was standing right above me. But it seemed like I was trapped in that dream forever. Yeah.
So I'm walking down the hallway. I'm going to my bedroom. I can sense something very dark and menacing in one of the rooms. The door was open. So I peek my head inside. I don't see anything. I open the door a little bit more and I see a very tall, thin, black, I'm going to say demon with long fingers and the longest legs. It reached all the way up to the ceiling. It was absolutely terrifying.
Before I went to Virginia City, I was sitting up in bed on my phone, just going through different things. And as I was sitting there, you know how if you're in a dark room, you have your phone light on, it really blacks out the rest of the room because of the light shining in your face. This face that was a white skull-like face just slammed itself at me, really surprised me, freaked me out, startled me, and was gone. The next day, I sketched it as fast as I could. I had to get it out of my head. And then I thought to myself, you know, I'm leaving the following day. I'm just going to start Googling around and seeing if there are any ghost photographs of the Washout Club, because we were going to go investigate that. And I did indeed find a photograph of the exact same face that I had drawn that had come and slammed his face at me the night before.
One of the strangest paranormal cases I ever worked on was with a guy who called me one day, and the first thing he said to me is, I think I'm possessed, but I'm a schizophrenic. So we went over to his house to investigate it, and the guy was just super kooky, but he's a really nice guy. And within the first hour I was there, but he wanted to leave, and I kept telling people, saying, let's just give this a shot, let's just see if we can pick up an EVP. So we did a recording in this garage, and the first thing it said, of course, was, get out. We asked who it is, and, you know, got a response that said, I am the devil. Long story short, there was a person who went out there to do an exorcism, which we witnessed, and I later found out that exorcist had a website on the internet where he was charging people $2,000. After the exorcism was performed and the guy paid him, I don't know what he paid him, he got home, and then shortly after that, tried calling him just to see, you know, if he was ever going to come back, because I didn't want the guy to pay him any more money. And I didn't know that he was even charging him at the time. But I found out after he left. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, he was going to do everything he could to help this guy because he took his money. Well, anyways, I didn't hear from the guy for like a week. I thought he just took off with the money. But it turned out he was in the hospital and he broke his neck. He said that something threw him down the stairs when he got back home. So, karma can be a bitch sometimes. But, yeah. I did the easy route. Just, that's what I can. Shit, I'm gonna regret this one.
So, as a child, I've always been a fan of ventriloquist dolls. Oh my god. I thought you were behind me.
No, it's the flowers.
And you were over there. No, it was like
I'm sorry, I've never heard anybody that was a fan of ventriloquist dolls.
No, I was. I loved the Goosebumps series and everything. Anyway, so I got one for Christmas. And yeah, it was creepy. It was the one from Goosebumps. And I spent day and night learning how to do ventriloquism. I studied it, everything, got really good at it. So I started putting on shows for my family in the living room. And then the more shows, performances I did, the more it felt like I became one with the doll. It got to the point where I began sleeping with the doll next to me. I ate with the doll sitting next to me in its own chair. And one day I went on a trip and I didn't bring the doll with me. And while I was on the trip, I had nightmares about the doll killing my family members back at home, as though it wasn't happy that I had left it there while I was gone.
I was in New York, and
You said?
yeah, that was bizarre.
Yeah, I saw that from afar.
I was in New York, and we were going up on the subway station, and it was an outdoor track, and got to the top of the stairs, and when I'm in the city, I always see lots of the dead, and lots of the dead see me. But this particular person was alive and I believed to be possessed. I felt this terrible energy when we got to the top of the stairs, and this woman did a complete 180. She was facing away from me. She did a complete 180 and faced me. Her eyes were dilated like I had talked about earlier, seeing. And she stared me down so much that my heart felt like it was going to stop. I kind of buffered the kids and said, everybody go that way. And we walked as far away from her as we could. She never took her eyes off of us. She moved herself so that she could keep eye contact with me. And it was one of the freakiest experiences I've ever had, being stared down. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't like this lunatic. It was pure evil staring through at me, and it knew who I was.
One of the very first collectible Ouija boards I ever bought was at an antique store in Alameda. And I learned about 2 years later through the hard way that you should always make sure that when you buy an older board that the words goodbye are not chopped off on the bottom of the board. This board I bought, there was no goodbye on it. It was printed without the goodbye on the board, and I had used that thing everywhere. And it was using that board that I first came across the entity Zozo. And I always wonder if part of the reason why Zozo haunts me to this day is because of that board.
So, a year or two of living in New York, I have my first very own apartment studio, and I happen to, anyway, so the neighbor met me downstairs to let me into the home. She gave me the key to my apartment and everything, and then she decided to take me out for wine. So we went out for wine, and she kept asking me, do you believe in the devil? Out of nowhere. We were having a good time, and all of a sudden things changed. And she asked me, do you believe in the devil? Sometimes, because she used to live in the apartment I took over, she said, sometimes the kitchen area gets really dark and your bathroom gets extremely dark. Your only safe place in the apartment is on the bed. And that freaked the shit out of me.
When I was a child, I used to have, and you can see it's one of these drawings I think on my Instagram or whatever, but it's a drawing of this big black shadow person behind me. And you would think that that would be scary to a child, but for some reason, to me, it was just something that was always there, behind me, around me. And so I wasn't afraid of it because it was normal for me. I didn't really think of it as being a scary thing until I got to college and started doing lithography and printing and artwork that included this image in it. And other people told me, what the fuck is that? That's so scary, that's so creepy, you know, what happened to you in your childhood? And I'm like, nothing. So I still at times see this thing standing in the corner of the hallway, and now seems to guard my son's door. I don't know who it is or what it is, but it's there.
The very first LiveSciFi investigation, this little short Filipino guy named Jay Tulabing and me had hack cameras, laptops strapped to our backs, and we thought we were gonna do something crazy. We had no idea what the fuck we were doing, but we thought, hey, let's go out to this lake and this place in San Francisco called Stowe Lake. And so we went out there, got out of our cars, and the fog was rolling in. And you could just see the fog kind of creeping over the lake. And we were like, dude, this is gonna be badass. And we're like, yeah, we're gonna the legend is of Stowe Lake is that a lady rolls around with her baby carriage around the lake because when she one day she brought her, when she was living, she was there at the lake and she actually lost control of her little baby stroller, and the stroller crashed into the lake and both her and her baby drowned. So we thought, hey, what better place to go than Still Lake? And I was always curious, I'd always heard about it, thought it was kind of cool to go out there. Well, anyways, we start walking up this trail up towards the lake and we hear something. We stop and look at each other. He had never been on a ghost investigation. Filipino people are really superstitious, so he was like about to piss his pants. And we both looked at each other, and so I'm like, come on, dude, let's go. Let's get closer to it. So we start getting closer, and then we see some smoke. And we thought, oh, that must be the white lady. So we go a little bit closer, and then all of a sudden, this guy pops out with a syringe. Chases after us and we run away. It was pretty freaky. Like running back to our car on live camera. It was stupid.
So this is part 2 to the story I just told. So about 2 weeks go by since I had wine with my neighbor, and I started hearing screams, high pitch, and mind you, I'm living in a very old building. I don't know how old, but it was extremely old, and I could see that there were doors there, but they filled them with bricks. There was a big fireplace, very creepy. So I suddenly hear loud screams, and I don't know where it's coming from. I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's just people playing, I don't know, but it keeps happening. And during the day, not just at night. And then I figured out it's coming from the woman downstairs, my neighbor. So I go downstairs, I knock on her door, and she opens the door, and her eyes are so dark. I could barely see the color of her eye. Her pupil had dilated. And she just stared at me. She didn't say anything. She opened the door viciously, angrily, and stared down at me. And I went right back upstairs, said, sorry, I was just checking on you. Went back upstairs. Next day I come home from school and I see bags of blood left at my door, real blood left at my front door. And inside there was an upside down cross.
So one time at the Sally house, I had felt a woman there that was telling me the story of her and her baby. And she talked about the fact that she had been a maid, that she had worked there and had become impregnated by the man who owned the house. She was searching for her baby still. She kept saying, I can't find my baby, I can't find my baby, please help me find my baby. And she still, as far as I know to this day, has not found out where her baby is. But her baby was, as I had seen it, stomped to death by the father that had impregnated the maid.
Every so often I get objects that are sent to my house that people claim are haunted, and I take them to an outside storage unit and place them there, and sometimes I'll pull them out to investigate them. There was one time where I got to my front doorstep and I immediately started smelling like cat piss. And I was like, well, I mean, why does smelled like cat piss, and maybe a cat or something urinated on the door. But as I got closer to my door, I noticed there was a little box that was on the front doorstep. I thought to myself, I didn't get my address out to anyone, and I was like trying to think, oh, what type of box is this? So I get into my apartment, and I was just really curious. There was no return address on it. It was USPS. I opened up the box, and then it's another box. And I was like, what is this? So there was a little note that was in there from a rabbi. Basically, he's like, oh, I got your address through someone who wanted to remain anonymous, but would you mind keeping this box? However, under no circumstances should you ever open it. And I was like, okay, well, like, this is kind of really piqued my interest. So I kept the box in my apartment, and I was going to take it out to the storage unit. Later that day, my son was taking a shower in the bathroom, and I was watching TV, and all of a sudden the TV went black, and it cut into static, and then went black, and then I hear this huge crash, and I was like, what the fuck? And he started crying. We had a 7-foot high pane of safety glass that was in the bathroom, and it completely shattered on top of him. And I asked him what happened, and he said, oh, I said, I don't know, but I thought there was a really tall lady in here right when it crashed. So that's part one. I'll take this here.
So back in New York, I worked in a haunted house attraction during the month of October, and I was placed in a room with a real coffin. And my position was to sit next to the coffin, stay still, and stand up and scream whenever someone was coming through, or to stand next to the exit and jump out at them. And I shared the room with a chainsaw massacre who would run out of a curtain with a chainsaw. You get the point. So my friend and I were talking while no one was coming through, and what's blocking the entrance of the room and the exit is a black curtain. And so all of a sudden we're talking and we look over and we see the black curtain opening and swinging back and forth. So we go into the other room, we talk to our other friend, and we say, hey, did you see that? Was that you? He says, nope, I have no idea what you're talking about.
When I was younger, I was a Girl Scout. That's how this story started.
Awesome.
And
Oh, popcorn.
and in the summertime, we would spend a couple of weeks working at a place called Cowtown, a place that we should investigate. It's full of old original pioneer buildings, 2 of which are reported to be haunted. One is the family home and one is the funeral home. I got the short end of the stick one day, and I was going to be the tour guide for the funeral home. I'd heard that it was haunted, and I was trying to not psych myself out. They had coffins there from the early 1800s. They had baby coffins. My job was, as people came through, to tell them about the history of the building. We also had this big hearse that was there. While I was there, I would spend the entire day there working for about a week and a half. Every day at a certain time of day, I would hear horse footsteps on cobblestones, and it would always be coming out of the hearse room. I'd always go in there and check it because I thought, somebody's playing a trick on me with a recorder or something. Or they do have reenactments there, but all of the streets in the cowtown are dirt, so there's no cobblestone. But I always heard at 5 o'clock the horse-drawn hearse making its rounds. And I did sell cookies.
A lot of people believe that shadows are, cultures believe that shadows they can be a negative energy that follows you around. Last night, when I was in the psychomantium, I looked over and you can see yourself kind of, spaced out over these tiles as you look down the mirror. You can see yourself, 1, 2, 3, 4, it just goes on to infinity. As I was looking down the row of myself, I saw something. I saw myself move, however I didn't move. And it just really creeped me out. And I always wondered if they are living as well, like in another dimension. And just the thought of that just really creeps me out, knowing that there could be another me that's not me.
So again, working at the haunted house downstairs in the costume department, you have all these masks, really creepy, scary masks and costumes hanging around. The blood, the walls have blood on it, fake blood, and a bunch of props, whatever. So I'm down there, I'm getting changed out of my costume after a shift, and I hear footsteps. So I'm thinking, oh, maybe my friend's there, maybe my coworker, whatever. So I start talking out loud, like, hey, have a good night, was it fun, whatever. No answer. So I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I keep getting changed, and then I open the door of the dressing room and I see a mask upside down. So I go over to it, like, what the hell? So I put it back the way it's supposed to be. I go to my locker, I grab my things out of my locker, hang my costume up, turn around, and the mask is floating upside down in the air, right in my face.
When we went out to the asylum in Washington State, we were taking a tour with one of the women that knows about the building, and we came on, I think it was the 3rd floor, and I was standing next to Nikki. Hey Nikki, shut up. And I immediately had to jump back because I saw these 2 legs run at me, and I felt like this huge waft of like this big childlike kid thing just kind of jump at me and trying to grab me around the waist like a bear hug. I jumped out of my skin, and I think I knocked her around a little bit due to it, the surprise of it. We went back downstairs to where one of the other caretakers was, and they were asking if anything had happened during our walkthrough, and so I recounted my story. And she said, oh, well, that was so-and-so. She said he used to live up there, and he was a grown man, but he had the intellect of a child. And every time that they would come around and work, where they were feeding or giving medicine or whatever, he would bound up to them and give them big bear hugs.
thing that always creeps me out is you're in a dark place and you're looking for ghosts. Like this one hotel we were at in Ukiah. And it's really dark and you have a little headlamp on and you're scouring around. And the last thing that you expect to see is a living person. And oftentimes for me at least, the living is a lot more scarier than the dead. I don't know, just like how the guy ran into here, so it's just always, kind of scary when you're investigating these places. You never know what you're gonna see, and it's always a living. For me at least, that scares me the most. These are getting a little bit cooler now. Which is perfect.
So I went to Salem and I did a tour where you go inside a church and they tell you the story of what happened here, the witch trials and everything. And there's at some point a big devil that lights up in the... What?
I'm just laughing at the big devil.
Okay.
That's funny.
At the big devil up in the corner. And as I was looking up at it, it felt like it was staring right back at me. So it was kind of creepy. And so I looked away and something whispered in my ear, "Look at me." So I looked back at it and its head had turned and it was looking directly at me.
It is creepy. I have a Salem story too.
Did you go to that?
I didn't go on that tour, but
Did you see the church in town?
yeah. So, my Salem story is, I went into, with my niece, I went into the old courthouse, and they give a little reenactment there. And I looked next to her, and I saw a woman standing there, and she was in the old time garb. She looked like a reenactor, but I knew that she wasn't because she had this yellow aura around her, kind of like a sunlight glowing. And I told my niece, I said, "There's someone standing right next to you," and she, being quick with her little handy camera, was like, "Bam," and took a couple pictures, and we caught this bright, huge yellow. It was probably about this big in comparison to me, yellow, or just right there in broad daylight, right where I said the woman was standing. And I think she was one of the falsely accused innocent people that was ended, their lives were ended by the Salem witch trials.
I think that's 80. We got 20 left. Okay.
20 total.
So the box that arrived at my front doorstep turned out to be a Dybbuk box. I brought the box out to the Sally house, and I thought it would be a good idea to open it on the show because I was really curious. And I don't know, I was expecting like something to jump out when I opened it, but the only thing that happened was that there was a cold breeze. When I got home, I think it was like the next day, it was a couple days after Halloween, I flew back home, and I had the box in my house because I kind of had time to go out to the storage unit again. When I woke up the next day from sleeping, the photo that was in the box was on my nightstand, but the box was still closed. I never opened it.
True story.
Yeah.
before heading out to Salem, we made a pit stop at a haunted inn. Sorry. Inn. And yeah, so we walked around the property and we heard that there was an old lady that haunted the place, and he actually ended up staying in the most haunted room because it was the only room available. So we get into the room. The inn is extremely old. The bed is so high I have to climb a ladder to get onto it. It's extremely old. And so I suddenly start to feel, my friend is asleep. I'm the only one awake, as usual. And I see in the bathroom the woman standing there. It scared me to death. I didn't know what to do. My friend was sleeping. So I just kind of stared back at it. Wasn't sure if I should try talking to it. I don't know. But eventually my friend woke up and said, "Oh, I can't sleep, I can't sleep." And then she looked over at to see the woman, and the woman wasn't there. And then I looked over at my friend, and my friend had become the woman. Her face was different. It was the old woman's face was like plastered onto my friend's face. And then I jumped, and then all of a sudden the old woman disappeared and my friend was back.
So the first time I went to Italy, we stayed in this huge villa that was built in the 1600s, and it was really beautiful and amazing. And I was nervous the minute that I walked into it because it was so old. There was so much residual everything there. The Nazis had occupied it during World War II because it was the nicest place around, and that's what they did. And so we settled on, we kind of got drafted to be on the 3rd floor and kind of up in the rafters in the far back bedroom. That first night, I couldn't sleep at all. There was a monk that was there that I kept seeing. He would walk in and out of the room. I don't know if he was residual or intelligent. He didn't seem to mind me at all. I finally fell asleep and had this dream where I felt like I was transported back in time, and I was a part of the household there, and I got to experience it, and it was really hard living there at that time, but really beautiful. And so this one isn't as creepy, but the monk sure was creepy to see walking in and out of the bedroom all through the night.
A lot of people ask me, what does it feel like to be possessed or being taken over by like a dark entity, and or come in contact with Zozo. And the only way I can describe it, I mean, a lot of people think it would be cool to do it, and they get all excited, like, oh yeah, like I want to contact Zozo, or really it's nothing to brag about. And the reason why I say that is these entities that I feel like to make you feel completely isolated. In some of my darkest moments in my life, I think I've always been when I've contacted, or when they've decided to contact me through these sessions.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, we got a lot more. Oh, Satan dead.
Yeah.
So,
snooze it.
Yeah. Wait, no, that was good. Okay, yeah. So, actually this happened in this house. I was walking through the rooms and I saw someone and I felt comforted by that person. And turns out that person is not here to protect me. Turns out it's a demon. And that just goes to show you that you cannot trust the others, anything on the other side. That was creepy because I swear I felt so safe in the middle of the darkness. Like that when I was looking at him, I felt like I was protected and that he would shield me from everything. Turns out that one thing is the thing I should be scared of. So, yeah. Walter, thanks.
We left about 15, I think.
I just had it in my head and it blanked out.
We're getting there.
So, it was about a past paranormal experience. Well, there's been a couple of times that this happened, but it was at the Sally house and we were doing Ouija and then just EVP, and during Ouija, my back was hurting. Did you hear that?
That was me.
Okay.
Yeah.
My back was hurting a lot and I kept, feeling like somebody was poking me in the back. And come to find out later, I had been scratched back there. But the creepiest thing was that on the EVP recorder, it would refer to me as that bitch. And over it would say, that bitch.
I can't see why that would be.
Of course not. I'm a former Girl Scout.
One of the things I used to do a lot when I used to investigate was to try to contact people that had been missing or children that had been abducted who nobody could find. And there was this one time where we were doing a live show and we had tried to contact Kaylee Anthony. And we were running a video ITC session with a ghost box session. This is maybe back in 2000, I don't know, 2008, I think. I mean, it was a long ass time ago. But we were all listening, and when you start getting contact with something, you just know, like you're getting contact with something. And immediately we started getting answers, and I'd asked, because we thought it sounded crazy, but we had asked, Kaylee, are you there? And he said yes. And then we asked, well, where's your body? And it said grandma. And we thought, grandma, that's kind of freaking weird. And then we said, where? Is it by grandma's house? And then it said, in the woods. And we're like, in the woods? I mean, that doesn't make any fucking sense, because she's supposedly disappeared from Florida. Well, a couple days after we aired that show live, I got a strange call from someone that was watching the show. He said, Tim, you're never going to believe this. I said, what? He's like, they just found Kaylee Anthony's body. And I said, where? And I said, well, behind your grandma's house in the woods.
So up in Canada, I was on an investigation not that long ago, and we had placed a voice recorder in the attic of a ladder that led to another spot in the attic where people used to hide there to avoid going to war, and one of the people who hid there died in that hole. And so we turned off the lights of the attic and we ended up going up there later on to do some sessions, the whole thing. And it said that the only person it would let go up the attic was me and the leader of the team I was with. And so we asked it, do you feel comfortable with the leader and I going to your, I guess, crawl space? And it said no. So we asked, why do you want us to go towards you? And it said intimidation. So I found it rather creepy how that thing was intimidated by us when we were intimidated by it. And then we asked it, why do you want us to go get the recorder? And it said, to hurt you. So that, yeah.
So I took a trip to Gettysburg, and while I was there, I kept getting a certain name, and the name was Edward Knox. If anybody out there has been to Gettysburg, you know that there's fields and fields of monuments out there to the different troops, Confederate and Union, that had passed away and that fought in the war. When I was out there, I kept getting that name, and I randomly discovered the monument that had Edward Knox's name on it. While I was standing there dumbfounded staring at this monument to him and his regiment, I all of a sudden felt overwhelmingly that I needed to run. And I just needed to run, and I needed to run right then. So I started running, and I ran across this field, and I heard a man yell loudly in my ear, "Stop!" And so I stopped, dead stop. And then I heard him yell, "Back up!" And so I backed up a couple feet. I heard him yell, "Get down!" And so I got down and crouched down. And the field's pretty high, so once you crouch down, you really can't see anything, and no one can really see you, because once I did, I was covered by all the high grasses. So I waited for a second, and then I heard someone say, "All clear." I got up. I didn't know what that meant. I tweeted out that I'd had this experience with Edward Knox, and one of the LiveSciFi viewers, who is a researcher, ended up tweeting me back and saying that she had looked him up and that he was famous for the Battle of Peachtree Field, or I can't remember, but the Peachtree Battle, and where he had his troops play dead in the field and surprised the Confederate soldiers and ended up overtaking them. But he did that by having them run, stop, and get down. So that's exactly what he had me do.
Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. Are you here?
You're desperate.
No.
That's the
Didn't give me enough time to think of something.
She's here.
Oh man.
Here she is.
Are you here?
So, my grandfather died when I was about 11 years old, and I asked my grandmother, "Do you feel him in the house or anything?" She says, "Yes, sometimes I see him making breakfast." Said, "Okay, that'd be cool to see him." So I actually did a small investigation in my own home, and at night I turned off all the lights and everything, and I started taking flash pictures of every corner of the house. And I found on one of my pictures an old lady. Her head was floating at the top of the kitchen near the ceiling. Later on, I started dreaming about her, and turns out she was a protector, so people have told me. And I don't necessarily believe that. And to this day, I wonder if she's still with me, protecting me, and if she's part of the reason why sometimes I feel very dark.
So back to my Girl Scout days. I was at Cowtown, and this time I was supposed to be working at the family homestead that they have out there. Really didn't want to work there because it was supposed to be the other haunted place, and it really felt very heavy and dark to me in that house. I don't know what happened there, but I always had the feeling that someone was killed, and more than someone, I had the feeling that a family was killed. I would work in there during the day, giving the tour and giving the speeches and doing my best to just ignore everything. I think I was like 12 or something. But at the end of the day, when I would be locking up, I would always look up to the attic and the curtains that are up there, and there's no access to that attic from the second floor unless you pull down one of those old sets of stairs. The curtains would always move, like the house, it felt like it was saying goodbye to me every time that I locked up, but the curtains up there in that little tiny attic window would always move open, like someone was peering out, and then they would close to make sure that I was gone.
Another object a viewer sent me from England was a interesting Ouija board that was black and had some weird inscriptions that were written on the back. They were carved in with a knife. The first time I got it, about 2 days later, I decided to use it on a show just because it looked so interesting. Immediately when I started using it, I felt a pretty strong connection to the board. However, it kept on talking about cats, black cats, that were being used for ritualistic purposes. A couple days after doing that session, the lad who sent me the board sent me the email. In the email, he said he found the board in his garage, and next to the board, there were 6 cats that were mutilated.
So another time at my grandmother's home, I was filming, I believe it was for YouTube, I don't know, and I was doing a tour of the upstairs. I really don't know why I was doing this. And I was turning quickly to go into my room, and I found on the footage, as I was turning quickly, on the top of the stairs, there was a blurry shape of a human. And so the more we watched the video, the more the blurry thing began to fade. And suddenly we watched the video and it was completely gone. So it was like I captured something and then decided to just leave. I don't know.
So this last summer, I was in Italy, and we were in a small town called Siena, and there is so much history there, and there's so many walking dead, so to speak, that it can be very overwhelming. So I do my best to block it out, but there are times when they won't let you block them out. And this was a day that was happening. I was in a restaurant having lunch with my daughter and my husband, and I went to go up a set of stairs, and I was going up and felt a shove on my back, and I was pushed so hard that I Looney Tunes face planted into a brick wall. And needless to say, blood was everywhere. Nobody that saw me fall understands how it happened. It just did. Almost there.
I know. Let's see here. So one of my good friends, we used to investigate together. We don't investigate together anymore. But we were investigating a brothel, a defunct brothel in California. And to get to the brothel, you have to drive probably about 20 miles down a long, windy road. And eventually, out of nowhere, you hit a town that's right along a delta. Anyways, we were investigating this hotel, and it got late. It was around 3 in the morning, or 2 in the morning, and she had to go because she was really tired, and so she hopped in her car, and I said, "Hey, are you sure you know how to get back?" And the thing is, there's only one way in and one way out of town, but the road is just really windy, and we were tired. I wanted to make sure that she was okay to drive. So anyways, she said, "Yeah, I'm fine," and so she hopped in her car, and she started driving, and I just got this weird feeling. And normally she calls me when she's on the road driving home, especially after like a long investigation, but this time she never called me. And so I got kind of worried. It was around 4 or 5 o'clock. Still didn't hear from her in the morning. And I finally got a call at 8 o'clock in the morning. And she was crying hysterically. I said, "Hey, what's wrong?" And she said, "You're never going to believe this." She's like, "I got lost on that road." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I just kept driving and driving and driving. And no matter how far I drove, it just didn't seem like I was going anywhere." I said, "Well, how can that be?" I said, "There's only one way in and one way out. You hit a highway on one side, you hit water on the other." And she's like, "Yeah, I just can't explain it." And so I asked her what happened. I said, "Well, what happened on your drive?" She said, "Well, I just kept driving and driving, and it just seemed like time just kept going by." And she said, eventually I started crying because I didn't know what I was going to do. And right when she said she was crying when she was driving, she said she saw a person standing on the side of the road. And so she thought, she this is about, she said it must have been 4 or 5 in the morning. So she pulled over, crept her car over to the person and said, "Excuse me." She said, and she was crying. She said, "Can you tell me how to get to the highway?" And the person was wearing a red coat and kind of slowly turned around, and as she looked into her eyes were glowing green. And she said she got so freaked out that she sped off, and within a minute she was up the highway.
So my friend texted me and said, "Please look me dead in the eyes," and she says, "There's something touching me." And I asked her, "What do you mean, something touching you?" And she said, "Yeah, there's something that keeps feeling my breasts." I said, "What? What are you talking about?"
It's not me.
I was like, "What are you talking about, your breasts?" And she's like, "I swear to God, something is touching me at night." She was so scared, she even cried about it. So I ended up sleeping over just to make her feel better. And I suddenly wake up and she's screaming. We turn on the light and you could see something tugging on her bra in the front, like trying to take it off. It was freaky.
So because Tim's friend had told him that story about the woman in the red coat, he decided to take me down that road. And there was one point that we pulled over and just got out of the car to kind of feel the energy of the space. We were alongside a little stretch of forest, and I mean little, it wasn't very deep at all. And I heard coming through the brush these big kind of footsteps, like maybe a wolf or something, going shoo, shoo, shoo. And as it was paralleling me in the forest, it was getting louder and louder and a little faster and a little faster. And it came out of the forest, and I was full on expecting to see a bear or a wolf or something. And what came out was a dust devil. I don't know if many of you know what that is, but it's basically like a little mini tornado of wind. And it came over, picked up a bunch of dust, came directly at me, almost like a wave would crashing over you, and then it just dropped. Dead, flat, silent, stop. Tim and I looked at each other like, what the fuck was that? And that was just really freaky.
I know. We're almost there.
I don't know stories now.
We're almost there.
Oh, you got us here. You got to help us.
All right.
You only have 2
One of the
minutes.
most violent attacks that I've ever had, physical attacks, occurred just 3 nights ago in the Blue Room here at the Monroe House. I'd done a Ouija board session with Kristen and Liv, and I came down the stairs and I instructed David and John and Liv to go upstairs to see if they could come in contact or get any evidence to validate our session on the Ouija board. Sometimes when I investigate, I hear noises that are just, you get kind of an intuition or intuitive type of feel that you should just go into a certain area. So I just said, hey, or something in my mind clicked, hey, I should take this necklace that I was wearing and go into the Blue Room. So I followed that, and I thought Kristen was following me the whole time, and I looked when I got into the blue room, it was so dark in there. I thought she was just standing right beside me, and I heard something. It sounded like her voice, but just different. So I kind of looked around, and I kind of got this feeling that there was nobody else in there except for something that I could not see. As I kind of looked around again, I heard a kind of a voice that sounded very distant, and then it just came right up to me. And as I turned my body to see what it was, something jerked me around the other way, and by the forearm, hurt my forearm, broke my wrist. Yeah, it's been pretty. That's my story. Alright, so I got one more to go.
This is hard, y'all.
This is hard.
I got some good ones left.
What?
I'm saving the best for last.
We only got one more to do.
Alright, okay, so I kept hearing voices under my bed. It was 3 exactly in the morning, and 3 is the witching hour. So I turned on the light. I was too scared to sleep in the dark, and I kept hearing whispers. And suddenly I just got the impulse to leave my room. It was just getting weird in there. So I did. I walked out of my room and downstairs. I turned on the TV. I just started watching TV to distract myself, but I kept hearing the whispers. So my guess was that whatever was under my bed followed me downstairs. So I was getting really freaked out and antsy, and I just didn't know what to do. Everyone was sleeping. And this is again at my grandma's house. So I just turned the TV a bit louder, trying to mask the whispering, but the thing started to yell. And it yelled so loud, I actually screamed, but no one else in the house heard it. So, I don't know what that was. Weird.
Sorry.
Pop the IR light, let's camera on.
We're losing light, yeah.
Yeah, we're losing light, so. Kristen, when you go in there, just pop the black screen in there, pop it on the table.
Okay. On this.
Yeah.
So, when I was really small, my mother used to tell me that if I wasn't good, the devil would come and take me. And it's a really good way to scare the shit out of your child, especially if your child can see spirit anyway, which she didn't believe. So every night I would go to bed, I would get my favorite toys, because if the devil was going to take me, I wanted to take those with me. And I would hold on to my bed sheets. My thought was that if I held on to my bed sheets tight enough, he wouldn't be able to get me out of the bed. And what my mom didn't understand was that every night I would see that dark shadow, which did not scare me, but I would also see a gray shadow, which did scare me, because I did not understand what it was, why it was there.
It was. It's like which story I should tell.
Do you actually have a lot?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I have a lot from my parents' house. Wow. Okay. I'm debating which one to tell.
Oh, that was freaky.
What?
It just felt like there was a black wall in front of me, like the sheep, but it wasn't.
Okay, when I was growing up, my parents used to take lots of business trips. And for whatever reason, my Nana watch us. And she was always acting really funny. The house we lived in was the same house that they grew up in. And they were always hush hush about the house and stuff. But she came over to the house, and I remember one night where we went to bed, and every night at the house I would have horrible nightmares. And I would always hear like a heartbeat sound coming from the basement, along with like footsteps that would walk up the stairs and stuff, and it just would creep me out. Well, that night I heard that, and my aunt, I went to go see my aunt because I was scared, and she said, "Oh, just go back to bed." She tucked me back in. I couldn't go to sleep. I could still hear the TV and the heartbeats coming from downstairs, and she had the TV on really loud, and so I just kind of stayed awake listening to that, and then all of a sudden I hear a loud scream. It was my aunt, and so I didn't know what to do. I just kind of stayed in my bed because I was like, I figured that whatever was down in the basement and that was tormenting me had started to torment her. So anyways, later that night, shortly after that happened, the police came over to my house, and she thought that what had happened was she was laying down watching TV supposedly, and we had this long bay window that would overlook the whole San Francisco Bay Area in my parents' house, and it was an old house, but there was a couch that was along it, and she was laying down there, and something paranormal had come up behind her and tried to choke her and wrapped her around the curtain. She never came back to her house ever again.
So, I'm trying to think here. So a bunch of teenagers went into a cemetery. They were, fucking around, doing drugs, smoking, the whole thing. They thought it'd be cool to dig up some bones. So that's what they did. They started digging up bones. And one kid yelled all of a sudden. So everyone ran over to him. They found a hand grabbing the hand of that one teen from under the dirt. And they screamed and ran away.
I just had my story and it went out of my head. Okay, so I just had it and it went out of my head. So, I know, I'm sorry, I just had it in my head and it like beeped out. So, I've been able to see spirits ever since I was a child, and for me, that's been normal. But what wasn't normal is when I had a son who also saw a spirit. He gets so much activity and different ones coming to try to talk to him that he has a very hard time sleeping at night. So we decided to put different protective things around his bed, crucifix, pictures of the Virgin, salt, you name it. We've tried it all so that he could just get one good night's sleep. Unbeknownst to the spirits that would come and visit him and sometimes torment him at night with horrific nightmares, he was going to be going away for a good 6 months, maybe longer. The day that he left, we all flew out to Idaho and flew back the very next day. I entered into his bedroom to put away some clothes, and it looked like a 2-year-old had had a tantrum. There was every protection thing that we had was strewn about the room, thrown around in random places. I could not find the crucifix, which was about this big, and it was brass, and it had the Jesus on it as well, and I couldn't find it. I mean, it's a big thing. It wasn't on the bed. It was hanging over his bed, over his headboard. Couldn't find it. Looked and looked and looked everywhere, and so I decided a couple of days later that I was going to vacuum the room, and as I was vacuuming, I got down on my hands and knees to look under the bed, and there was the crucifix. It was underneath the bed, which is impossible for it to have fallen and gone, down the headboard wall or anything. It was in the very dead center of the bed, underneath, dead center, top to bottom, left to right. And I was just shocked. It was the creepiest thing. It was like whoever has been tormenting him at night in the house had a hissy fit tantrum because he was gone. And every religious item was moved, thrown, tossed, or placed.
Don't hit your head on the board.
What?
Don't hit your head on the board. It has to be dark when you come back.
Yeah.
Try to contact. Okay.
Yeah.
So now that we are in complete darkness, let the darkness descend upon us. Let all the energies that we talked about, all the spirits, all the demons, and anything in this home, make your presence known. Do you like the darkness now? Did you hear that? Can you make a noise again? What are you feeling, Kristen?
I'm feeling a lot of heaviness. darkness behind me.
Yeah.
Like dark, dark, heavy. Oh my God. That was crazy, that I am.
Yeah, right. Alright, whatever's here. I want you to speak into this recorder here. If you are the devil, speak into the recorder. There were 100 stories and experiences that were shared tonight. Is there one common thing linking all of our stories together? Do you want to take one of us or all of us into the darkness with you? I am the devil. The devil. We are the devil. This is pretty fucking good. I'm like double constantly. I have another question.